And we're live. It is Monday, November 10th, year of our Lord 2025. It is 8 o'clock a.m. And I want to preemptively announce before you guys delude yourself otherwise that there's not going to be a show tomorrow. There's not going to be a show tomorrow because I will be heading to the airport to get on a plane to fly to Los Angeles.
Oh, I'm also going to the airport tomorrow. What
Oh,
time
really?
are you going
When
to
are you
Reagan?
going to the airport?
Very early, and I'm hoping that is bodes well for my prospects.
And where are you going?
I am. I hope. I doubt she's watching. Anyway, I am going to surprise a friend who is very ill in the hospital in
Well,
Dallas. In
in
Dallas.
Dallas. Well, that is an excellent thing to do, and
If y'all know her, do not say anything.
may the forces of good and light cause your trip not to get canceled, because it is a good thing. Um, I am, on the other hand, going to Los Angeles for crass mercenary reasons. There's no humanitarian aspect of this. I'm trying to raise money for Lawfare. And, there are a bunch of rich people in Los Angeles.
Tyrion. That's humanitarian.
There is a bunch of rich people in Washington who are unusually well positioned to help Lawfare. And yet, the rate of giving among super rich Los Angeles people is low compared to, say, super rich uh, San Francisco people, or even though, like I am Hollywood. I mean, why they wouldn't
Have they seen your videos?
I don't know. You'd think with all the Get Ready with Me videos, with all the that Hollywood would be lining up to help, but no, they're not. So we're gonna go out there. We're gonna make a pitch. We're going to have a dinner. We're gonna um, talk to people who are the sort of people who should be giving money to Lawfare. And look, if you know people in the Los Angeles metropolitan area who have very large checkbooks and want to meet with me, I've got nothing but time on my calendar. But the result of all of that is that there will not be a show tomorrow. There will be shows Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday, with the caveat that I'm not sure whether I will be on West Coast time or East Coast time. So not sure whether the shows are going to be, at 8 o'clock a.m. local time or 8 o'clock a.m. Lawfare time. I'm going to keep you posted on that. There are not going to be any surprises, but just keep yourselves agile this week with when you are expecting Dog Shirt TV. Folks, there was a special military operation this weekend. And it was different from others. I meant for the special military operation to involve a new gobo of Deathhead Putin. And my new projector had something to say about that, which was to say no. And it expressed no by burning the Death Head Putin gobo to a crisp. I mean, there are pictures of it now on Dogshirt. It was awesome. It took about 60 seconds. It filled the room with smoke.
Wow.
And I have to say, I do not blame the projector for this because burning Vladimir Putin is a perfectly rational response to who he is and the events of the world. And so I tried it a second time with a second gobo because I had thought this might happen because I have been in the market, folks, for cut rate gobos. And
I don't
gobos,
know what a gobo is. You
so a
probably.
gobo is a little slide that you can put inside
Oh.
a spotlight, and you can pour a huge amount of light through it and get a really, really nice image. It's unlike my lasers. You can't write on the walls with it. You can't change it. It's a static image, but it can be a full color image. So some of you may have seen, well, the Ukrainian flag that I put on the Russian embassy. The full color one is always done with a gobo. And the advantage to gobos is that you can do full beautiful images with them, which you can't really do with a laser, which can only do outlines. The disadvantage is that they're expensive and they're static. And if you do full color, you have to do them in glass, and glass gobos are expensive. Well, I thought I had found a solution to this problem, which is that there is this one company, I believe it's called Rosco. Guys, don't buy from them, that makes heat resistant plastic gobos. And I thought, now this is, the difference between $84 versus $450. So it's a pretty substantial difference. And I thought, let's give it a try. So I had them make a gobo of Deathhead Putin, whose artist has given me permission to do a special military
Oh,
operation with
nice.
it. I'm very excited about it. So I ordered 3 of them on the theory that there was just some little chance that the gobo projector might burn it to a crisp. And it took about 60 seconds to burn it to a crisp. And and John Hawkinson, who here is uh, uh, making aspersions about my technical sophistication, is dead wrong. Because in fact, these are designed for LED spotlights, which is exactly what I have. Now, there is a chance that and I did check the temperature specifications. There is a chance that the spotlight I am using is pouring more heat into than it acknowledges in its specs that it's doing. It does tend to burn a little hot. Anyway, Putin did not survive 60 seconds in there either time that I tried, and you can see the pictures of the roasted to a crisp gobos on the site. And so I had to default to the prior methodology, and I ordered a glass gobo, and I ordered it from a company who I trust and that is not flying by night, and I will have to await next week to do that special military operation, all of which brought me to the fact that invisible ink spray is kind of cool and I like it. And I'm not admitting that I did anything because chalk art is illegal, but in Washington, and I suspect invisible spray may also be illegal. So I'm not going to admit anything, but if you look at the site, you will see that somebody did a cool thing this
Okay,
weekend with a
I just have to
sunflower.
preempt John Hawkinson. No guest before the monologue is done, and the monologue is not done before the cacti. And I urge everyone involved to please end the monologue.
I was called out.
Everyone involved. All of which is a long winded way of saying that the sun is shining, the birds are chirping, it's going to be a great fucking day. And cactuses.
You're watching Dog Shirt TV, a forking revolution in morning television.
You are watching Dog Shirt TV, and it is a goddamn revolution in morning television. One of the revolutionary features, of which there are many, is that sometimes the monologue gets a little bit out of control and the
Sometimes.
guests start coming on before the monologue is done, and Holly has to remind me that there is in fact a monologue going on, and I have to be put in my place. And another one of the revolutionary features, of which, as I always point out, there are quite a few, is that sometimes, you know, if you buy cheap, high wattage gobo projectors, because the theory is you can buy more of them and break them faster and get them seized if they cost like $600 rather than if they cost $1,600 or $3,000. You can go through them fast. They're going to burn hotter than their manufacturers admit. Just a thought. John, we're not allowed to have fun anymore, but we are allowed to argue about who was lying to whom about technical specifications.
Well, good morning, Ben. First of all, just as a production note, you're aware that you're zoomed in super far and we're seeing your head you have a bigger head than usual today.
And you have large pores.
Yeah, I'm working on that.
Kidding.
aware.
Your
I'm
pores
not
are fine.
I'm not sure what's causing that, but let me check my camera's specifications.
I see. I'm imagining it's like Anna Bauer's camera that would randomly zoom in on her when she least expected it. Um, so I just wanted you to be aware that boycotting Roscoe is like declaring war. Uh, Roscoe dominates the theater industry in a way that air travel dominates the national travel industry. And so it is no small thing to say you were boycotting Roscoe. That would be to say essentially that you could not get any gels for your theatrical lights. You could have no smoke machines. I just that's a huge step, and I'm not sure you're aware of the import of it. So I just wanted to make sure that you were.
Sounds like a monopoly. It sounds like some sort of lawsuit needs to happen.
Yeah,
Well,
there
I will
actually
just say to the folks at Roscoe, do not advertise that your cool ink plastic will survive life in a LED spotlight if it will not. I mean, look, I'm fine, big tech, whatever. Fuck you.
but also I think this is an industry, Ben, where it's designed for professional users, and that means the user has a lot of responsibility for the integration process. It's up to you to measure the heat out of your instrument. It's up to you to know the acceptable level of heat for your gobos or your gels. In fact, I'm not. It's been a long time since I've done stage lighting and theater tech as measured in decades, and I was never really into it. So this is all I put amateur in the Chiron here for a reason. But gels only last a certain number of hours in a high wattage lighting instrument. Uh, the idea that you could have a plastic gobo in color is almost ridiculous, but um, but even if
It
true,
is ridiculous.
even
In
if
fact,
true,
it is untrue.
heat management is a huge issue. How close to the lens your gel is, and there's suggestibility of this in most projectors, is a critical factor. There's a lot on the user here. So I would be very reluctant to blame any of the vendors, even were they at fault, and just encourage you to be careful. But realistically, I suspect that if it's a projector worth projecting with, a metal gobo is required. And I recognize that that has challenges for color. Although I don't know, maybe you can do something with gels on top of a metal gobo, and then you can just replace the gels periodically, every day or so when they
All
fade.
right. First of all, your decades of non-involvement in theater tech are coming through here, John, because the LED, which puts out much lower heat than a source for spot or any incandescent spot. I mean, dramatically less heat. Um,
Well, there's less
you
heat in the light output, but there's actually a lot of heat that then the instrument has to dissipate into the air around it, and that's often a problem too.
So when I was using Himar the Gobo projector, it was cool to the touch while projecting, and I could reach into it and pull out the gobo and replace the gobo with another. And that is what allows these full. This one is definitely hotter than that because it's lower quality. But a Source 4 takes an hour to cool down, right? It's a super hot instrument. And so look, the um uh using colored glass is a thing you can do, and I've done it dozens and dozens of times. Uh, you don't need to use only metal gobos. The only question is how cheap can you go? And the answer is glass is the minimum. This projector works fine with a glass gobo. I have tested that with a Kash Patel image, which is going to be making its debut pretty soon. Um,
I'm just gonna cut this off and take it offline. None of us know what you're talking about, and we have very little interest in discussing it at
well,
length.
we are done because John has vanished and you have shamed us. And
No
by the
shame.
way,
It is your show, but I'm just saying, like, I don't have most people just learned today what a gobo is and still has a vague sense of it. And like you should have a brainstorm with people who know this, like, in a different setting
well,
because
I
we don't know what you're
consider
talking
myself rebuked, and I'm
on your
uh,
own show.
on my own show.
Yeah, I think
And
we should talk about something that everyone can relate to, which is
so I would also point out that that there are others who disagree with you, um, and I don't doubt that your point has merit, but I will also point out that there are always a lot of theater kids in the audience, and theater kids know what a source for is, and they know what a gobo is, and they know what the difference, John Hawkinson, between a gobo and a gel is. And so I'm just saying.
I think we've divided into cliques, like high school, and I think we're gonna have a knife fight at this point, and it'll be very exciting.
So,
But
Holly, what is on your mind this morning, if not gobos?
frog costumes.
Frog
Yeah.
costume. We're doing it, right?
Oh, I have bought my frog costume.
So
So
have I.
guys, very exciting news
Make an
yesterday
announcement, Holly.
that was it Dale yesterday at church. Somebody informed me of this very exciting event on Saturday. I think it was Dale who is in the Greek chorus and also attends my church. Um, there is a frog march, like a march of people in frog costumes.
Yeah, I don't think we should call it a frog march.
Yeah. I think they're calling it a frog march, but anyway, it so there's apparently multiple ones across the country. I think you can find out through Indivisible or mobilize.us for sure. You could find it out. There is I will try to find the link, although I'm terrible at finding these links on the show. But in DC, it is at the Lincoln. It is, I mean, imagine a lot of frogs at the Lincoln Memorial. I hope I have such respect for the Lincoln. I mean, no disrespect to Abraham Lincoln.
No, Lincoln would be there himself, maybe
Yeah,
with
he
a
had a
top
good
hat.
sense of humor, so I feel
Yeah.
like we're on safe ground there. But anyway, I must be there. I am going to clear my schedule. Oh, good, someone Alice has put it in there. And apparently, again, there are multiple frog marches, and you're encouraged. You don't have to wear an inflatable. I think Ben has bought an inflatable.
I mean, if you're going to do the thing, you may as well
Okay,
do
but
it right.
Here's the thing. Inflatable costumes are difficult to navigate the world in. They are. I've worn not a frog inflatable. Well, actually, I haven't worn it, but I've seen other people really wipe out in an inflatable. I have a story there.
Okay, wait, we got to pause here because I think John, though he may not speak for the population of the audience on theater equipment, he probably does on why this is frog themed. The answer is inflatable frogs, inflatable dinosaur costumes
Inflatable everything has taken off.
have become a big part of anti-ice protests. But in Portland, Oregon, the so-called Portland Frog Brigade has been doing this for years, long since before the Trump administration, and they have developed a important doctrine called tactical frivolity, which speaks for me very deeply. And I wrote a column about them recently and the role of humor in anti-authoritarianism. And so I feel very connected to these people, and you cannot imagine the joy in my heart when Holly texted me the other day that the Million Frog March was happening. And for those of you who are not old enough to remember the Million Man March called by Louis Farrakhan in the early 1990s, and uh, it was a real thing, and now it's going to be the frogs. So,
So yeah, so Ben ordered an inflatable, and I will help you walk if need be, so you don't die in your inflatable. But I do not trust myself not to um, have some catastrophic accident while attempting to walk around in an inflatable costume. So I got and also at this point in my life, I do not wear things generally that are not comfortable, especially for hours at a time. So I got a frog onesie. Me and Melissa is also, our friend Melissa is also going to be attending, and we are wearing frog onesies with hoodies. They have a hood. They're very cute and comfy and look warm. So if it's a cold day, I think we're good.
um, cool. Yeah, I'm excited about it. I think y'all should y'all should show up with frog costumes, frog hats, frog whatever. You know, Million Frogs is also there's been a lot of in Jewish circles, a lot of Plague of Frogs
Yes,
jokes
and
going
Christian
on.
ones. Yes,
And
and Jewish.
so we're going for the whole Plague of Frogs thing. And it's going to be a thing, and you should be there. Next Saturday, I will have just flown in from Los Angeles,
Perfect.
hopefully flush with new grants for lawfare, but in all likelihood, more flush with emails and people to follow up with. And we're going to do it, folks. We're gonna make the Plague of Frogs happen in Washington, D.C.
Yep.
Um, all right, what else is on your mind this morning, Holly?
Well, at some point, and it could be today, if you don't have an agenda. So I feel some pressure from myself, but also from other people in my life, not anyone in my family, but different people in the publishing world, that I should write another book, that I should get started on another book. And I have a few ideas, but I'm just really not inspired. So I'm kind of curious, without any input from me and without any prompting from me, what people would say that I should write on. I
Whoa.
just would be very interested in what people came up with. I think that might be interesting.
So if you have ideas for Holly for her next book, jump on the screen or write in the chat. I will say, as somebody who's written 8 books, um, that writing a book when you don't want to write a book
Yeah.
is a bad idea.
No, I want to write a book. I really loved the experience of writing the last book, but it
No,
was,
but you just said you don't know that you feel inspired. You don't
well,
know
that's
that.
different. I want to be inspired. I don't, like, I don't want to. So I see a lot of books out there, not to pick on the sort of religion oeuvre, but it's easier to pick on in the religion space in particular, of people who just phone it in. Like they published one book and it did okay, and they just sort of pick some topic. I'm reading a lot of books that are just, they're not, there's very little research behind it. There's very little citations. They're just very like, have a whole like, I wrote this in a week thing. I'm not going to obviously mention any names, but I don't want to phone it in. Like if I'm going to write another book, especially given the time involved and given the how little money is involved, I do not want to write a book just to write a book. I want it would have to be something I'm really passionate about. But sometimes you get passionate about it if the idea is good. So I'm just wondering what people would and I can't, the chat's going by too fast. So I can't see the chat. I'm gonna have to go back up in the chat to see what people are writing. But yeah, I'm just interested what people would come up with.
Well, let me ask you a different question, not a book specific question, but really a book is just a density of work product in a specific area. Um,
That's the
and
problem. I am spread out all over the place.
right, you're writing about African politics, you're writing about you're doing protest stuff, you're doing so my question is not about a book. My question is about if you were going to focus on something and do a density of work in a particular area, leave aside whether it's, you know, a book or whether it's a bunch of articles or whether it's, you know, something else, what's the area that you would want to do your next density of work in? That seems to me to be the place to start whenever I'm like, well, should I write a book? Should I not write a book? I write columns. And, you know, you build a density of thought and an area, and then a book kind of comes out of that. That's how Susan and my uh, uh, book on the first Trump White House and presidency materialized. Kind of materialized out of other work. It's super hard, and this is why people have such a hard time writing a dissertation. It's super hard to say, now I will write a book. And um, you know, because that's not actually how most books develop. So my question is antecedent to the book. What would you want to do? What's the area where you would want to be doing work right now?
So one of my problems is this. And again, I don't want to like give too much away of my own thinking of topics because I'm just paranoid and anyway, I but part of my problem is this. And this has been my problem the whole year. Like I would kind of like to become a journalist of sorts because I like talking to people and I like you know, sort of going out and seeing what's going on kind of thing. Um, but reporting takes so much time and money, and I have no byline, and I have no sort of entree, and I have no funding. And so there's this whole thing of like, you know, do I want to embark on some deeper research that will cost me quite a bit of time and money when I don't know if anything will come of it, kind of thing. I don't know. Like I wrote a pretty long form article that I cannot find a place to publish it. I probably need to cut it down quite a bit.
What is
Um,
that?
so I wrote a long article on this group of Christians in the Bay Area. I've become friends with them, but I interviewed them over months and I went out to visit them and they all sort of decamped from an evangelical church to a mainline church and it was about I'm probably just going to end up this is what usually happens. I write something, I try to like shop it around, everyone ignores me or like even it's just so hard. Freelance writing is soul crushing or I just get impatient with trying to shop it around and then I just end up putting it on my Substack, which is actually doing quite well. Um so yeah, so I and I thought it was pretty good. You know, it's a narrative form and I've seen similar articles like these sort of narrative long form journalism in various outlets. But by established, you know, journalist, you know, I think it's very difficult to write an article like that without some sort of, you know, as you're established as a journalist or you have a relationship with the
Yeah,
outlet.
although honestly, this is what Substack is great for,
Yeah.
right? Like establishing that there is market for yourself.
Yeah.
Um, but then you have to commit to the idea that the Substack is your presumptive venue unless there's some reason to do it somewhere else. Um, i.e., because you've been invited to, because it's a particularly prestigious market. But if you treat the Substack as, a this is where this is sort of where I put the dregs where I can't get published anywhere else.
It's just it's freelance publishing is really not a fun enterprise.
Right. No, I agree. And look,
It's not the dregs.
it's not the way I use Substack. But admittedly, I use Substack in a very eccentric fashion, which
Well,
is,
and you're like an established person. Like you have like a whole reputation and you have another whole outlet that you publish on, as the Lawfare King and so on. So,
right. I mean, my theory of Substack is I got kicked off Twitter. Um, there was a market for me on Twitter in my kind of non-lawfare persona, whether it's, sometimes very substantive, often frivolous, and much more activisty than I am in any other role. So I will migrate that to Substack, and I will build some small percentage of the audience that I had on Twitter, which was enormous. But it will be my audience, not Twitter's audience. And to the extent it gets monetized, it will be monetized by me, not by um, Elon Musk. That's my theory of the case. That's not a freelancer's theory. That's a arrogant male, could be used by arrogant females too, but an arrogant, like, I know there's a market for me. I know there's a
it's not
market.
arrogant, it's just a reflection of your position in society. So,
And it's also a really good platform for experimentation.
yeah.
Um, and so I use it that's how I use it. Um, Look, for you, Substack is a potential area to say, like, okay, X, Y, and Z publications in the religion and public affairs and African politics and
Whatever else.
whatever other stuff I'm thinking about space. You don't think I'm worth your time. Let's see what my stuff is worth. And I think there's a lot to that actually. But it requires it's also very valuable, by the way. Having a Substack that's thriving is extremely valuable to New York publishers because selling a Substack and selling a book are such similar things. And so I think just doing a density of the work that you want to do presumptively on your own Substack, but also on the Bulwark when they want to publish you, on Lawfare when you're doing African, the uh, African conflict and politics stuff, which is very much in our bailiwick. Um, we don't really do domestic religion stuff unless people get violent, in which case we do. But there's like doing figuring out like what the um, using the Substack as a place for density of Holly Berkeley Fletcher makes a lot of sense. And along the way, you will figure out like what the issues are that you really want to focus on.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think I have to. Oh, the other thing is that I'm passionate about. So I really loved, I think one of the best parts of my book is the integration of history. And I really loved doing that, getting back into sort of that literature. And that is my background. So I'd like to do some history, so that'd be good. I just, yeah, I'm kind of like, this whole year has been very scattered. Like I wake up every day and I'm just kind of throwing spaghetti at the wall, which is good. But after a time, you get tired of feeling scattered and you want to feel like you know what you're doing every day, if
Right.
that makes any sense. So I just feel like I need some direction in my life. So, so
What am I going to be when
pattern.
What am I going to be when I grow up by
Yeah,
Holly
and
Berkeley Fletcher.
and I keep having these. In fact, this young woman that I mentored at my previous job, she came by this weekend. It was so lovely to see her. She actually she commissioned a painting that turned out really well. And she loved it, which I was really thrilled about that. Um, but people are always saying to me, and like, oh, I want to be you when I grow up. And I'm like, well, I'm not grown up and I don't know who I am. So good luck with that. Yeah. But
Yeah,
it's very flattering. People either like think I'm a disaster or they think like, oh, I want to be you when I grow up. And I'm
that's
just like,
because the line between being a disaster and being super admirable is wafer thin.
interesting. That's an interesting theory. Interesting theory.
So Jeff brings up in the chat the question of whether we're going to talk about the super expansive January 6th
Yeah, we need to
pardon.
drop this. I'm basically, this is being incredibly self-indulgent, and I appreciate everyone's ideas. Basically, let's just cut this off. And if you
Although
have
I do want to point out that when I was being self-indulgent and talking to John about
touche.
Spotlight and gels and gobos, Holly was really impatient with it. But when the
Touche.
self-indulgence is on her
Ex
part,
except
then
I
it's
think
all
being human is something all humans can relate to versus, and what am I going to do with my life is a topic that people can have input into.
all right. So let's talk briefly, and we're only going to talk briefly about these pardons because they don't matter. And here is why they don't matter. Because, first of all, January 6th was 5 years ago now. And so the statute of limitations on nearly all January 6th crimes at the federal level is going to be uh, uh, going away. Number two, because even if there were cases still to bring, the current administration has no intention of bringing them. And therefore, it's going to be another 3 years at a minimum before anybody is in a position to do that. Number three, and most important, because the only people who are interested in bringing these cases are bringing them at the state level. And by the way, they haven't fared very well at the state level as a general matter, but the president's pardons do not apply to state level offenses. And so Rudy Giuliani does not have any federal exposure that is real at this point. He has only state level issues, and the president can't pardon him for that. So it really is a entirely performative and symbolic thing that has no application to anything, and it should be criticized because it is performative of the wrong values, performative of lies, performative of uh, uh, you know whitewashing history, and so the performance that it's engaged in is ugly, but it does not matter in anything other than a spiritual sense. And while I don't mean to diminish spiritual injury by any means, I do mean to say that right now we're dealing with tangible, real injuries to actual democratic values that the president does have the capacity, let's put it in the vernacular, to fuck with. And so forgiving people who are functionally already forgiven uh, for theatrical purposes just doesn't rate high on my list next to, you know, uh, um, refusing to spend money appropriated by Congress, snatching people off the street, deporting them, pretending that Antifa is a global terrorist organization, and killing Venezuelans who may or may not be engaged in criminal activity. So that is my view of it. I intend to ignore it, but I do understand that it makes some people very angry.
So let's talk about the shutdown now that you mentioned that. So I wanted Dale to come on. By the way, Dale, our friend Dale in the Greek chorus, is a former Hill staffer who worked on appropriations. If I'm correct, Dale, I hope I'm getting that correct. Anyway, he's very knowledgeable and very low key and modest about it. And he says he's on his phone. Um, he says he's on his phone today, and he doesn't think he can come on, but we should have him on another time because he's very low key and knowledgeable, and he doesn't toot his own horn, unlike some other people who are very knowledgeable, are not very knowledgeable, or spread herself too thin, and then come on and do indulgent segments on the show. So Dale should come on. But the shutdown, I don't I'm I don't know how I feel about this.
I don't know. I have such
Be-
mixed feelings
because
about
I
it.
have so many friends who are federal workers who are in serious distress at this point.
There are
At the,
literally food kitchens in the Washington area that are serving federal workers.
yes.
Restaurants are giving away lunches, and this is not a performative exercise. This is help that real people really need. You know,
And it's
uh,
hurting our local economy too.
in a
It's at
big
this
way.
point, it's really, and I realize that's sort of DC, but federal workers are all over the country, so I would think it had. But so I have friends who are federal workers who are very distressed at the end of a very horrible year for federal workers, and I'm incredibly sympathetic to the plight of federal workers. However, I just, I mean, I feel like this is just yet another episode of the Republicans weaponizing the fact that Democrats are decent human beings.
Right.
And I'm tired of that. I'm tired of them being treated like their human decency being weaponized. And so then they're put in a corner of like either, you care about people or we win and you get nothing. So it puts them in an impossible situation for people who care about human beings. But it seems like they're just caving right now and they're getting nothing. And it's a repeat of what we've seen so many times before. And I'm just really tired of it. It's like, it's like negotiating with terrorists and like Hamas or whatever has the hostages and and they're basically using human shields as well. And then and I'm not saying Israel hasn't done anything wrong, but this is just as an example, of terrorists like holding a gun to someone's head, and then you have to like give them a ransom. And I
And I
just so sick
disagree,
of this.
Holly. I don't think it's what they've been doing before. It's far worse. The administration is using the current shutdown to get to stop doing the things they don't want to do, but continue to do the things they wish to do. And that's not a dynamic we've previously seen, and it's not a dynamic we understand how to deal with.
And it's terror. It's like terror. It's political terrorism, is what it is. It's not little literal terrorism, but it's like political terrorism. And so I don't. But I see very clearly that the Democrats don't eventually cave. Like I don't know. Like things are going to get very bad. The government is literally crumbling. Flight delays. That's at
Well,
Thanksgiving. Like
but
that's
the only way things get better is if it hurts, right? I mean, this is all about pain. So having a shutdown without pain is not having a shutdown.
yeah.
Right. So I agree with everything you just said, Holly, and I have real mixed feelings about it. But let me make a very cynical case for the way the Democrats are playing this. Um, and I don't know that I believe this, but it is basically the argument that JVL has been making on the Bulwark, which is the Democratic demand would relieve Trump of the electoral consequences of what he's doing, which is that, they're giving him an out for a dramatically unpopular idea, which is that everybody should pay more in health insurance premiums. Many people buy a lot. And that it is not the worst thing in the world to plant the flag on that issue and then lose. so that he bears your losing becomes the text of we tried to stop this. And you go into a midterm election year with a very, very clear record that your health insurance premiums went up because we didn't have enough members of Congress in either house to force the president to do that, to change course. It's very cynical. It's not the kind of politics that I like or that I believe in. But I'm not sure that JVL is wrong, that actually this is an example of winning by losing, and that if you're trying to set up the next year after this year's off-year elections, if you're trying to set up the next year of argument, losing this fight is not a terrible way to do it. And again, I don't want to overstate that because I really don't believe in that kind of politics. But can I say,
it's important they message this properly then, which they're terrible at doing, by the way. But
right, although individual candidates may not be terrible at it, right? And
yeah,
the Democratic overall message is a disaster as always. But it turns out that Abigail Spanberger's message was pretty good, and Mikey Sherrill's message was pretty good, and Zoran Mondami's message from a different point of view was pretty good. And there's a lot to work with in this material.
yeah. I
Can
mean,
we talk
I
about
felt
the SNAP litigation?
We have not talked about the SNAP litigation.
Sorry, I said can we? But
Sure.
yeah,
go
let me
ahead.
just make one last point and then we can talk about the SNAP litigation, which to me is just like, I mean, talk about evil. Like you're basically going to disobey a court order so that you don't have to feed people. Like how awful is that? But anyway, I feel like they did not choose the right issue to begin with because again, if the Republicans, they were saving him from themselves by picking the health. Like if they won, then healthcare premiums would go down and the Republican and basically people don't pay attention. People, a year from now, they're not going to even notice or care that that the Democrats sort of got them cheaper healthcare that's, I think Biden's whole administration demonstrated that they actually don't notice or care when you save them from pain. So, or even give them things that they like, they don't even notice where it comes from unless you beat them over the head with it, which Democrats are not good at doing. So anyway.
Right, but again, the population, even if Republicans don't understand, the population does. And if somebody's health insurance premiums have just gone up, and they literally in some states have gone up by 85 to 100%, right? And we're doing, that is something they are going to remember.
No, they're going to notice it, but so that's why they shouldn't have picked that issue, the Democrats.
And you as a candidate can say, your incumbent Republican member of the House, member of the Senate, voted to increase your premiums. We warned them about it. We even tried to shut down the government over it to get that restored. They fought us every step of the way, and that is why your premiums went up. And
Can Cory Booker do another filibuster? Like, do another filibuster on this bill. Like, do another, okay, cave, but then make a big deal of it.
Right. You could, but you have to somehow translate it into an argument. Now, it's not a fight anymore. We're giving up the ghost on the fight, apparently. But like somehow at every level of argument in the electoral context, from the highest altitude messaging of the party to the lowest altitude granular individual races, you have to make the argument, they did this to you, we opposed it, we lost, and we lost because there aren't enough of us, and you can fix that by voting for X person. John, you wanted to talk about SNAP?
I wanted to talk about Snap and its litigation because it's a little more nuts and bolts and mechanical. I hope Holly doesn't accuse Snap litigation of being the gobo of the final 10 minutes. But and Ben, I don't know if you've had a chance to read the First Circuit's opinion from last night.
I have not.
So
And, in
essentially,
the triage of the litigation that I follow,
like what
I
other
actually
opinions
have
came
not
out?
followed the Snap. I haven't followed the Snap stuff carefully at all, actually.
Nothing else came out in the last 9 hours, so I don't know what you've been up to and what your priorities are like. But yeah, so as background for everybody, Judge Jack McConnell in Rhode Island issued a TRO basically saying the government had to either fully fund SNAP or partially fund it using the contingency money that Congress has set aside for that purpose. And the government came with two different deadlines for each of those options. And the government said, okay, we're going to do the partial funding, not the full funding. And then they didn't really do that either. And so there was a compliance issue. And so then there was a further order from McConnell saying, you didn't comply with my earlier order. And so here's the remedy. And the remedy is you're going to fully fund SNAP. And the government appealed that remedial order. And the procedural process at the First Circuit is super weird, and I'd love to talk about it, but I know the Gobo haters will come in for that one. So, but let's just say, they while waiting for the First Circuit, they went to the Supreme Court, and Justice Jackson ordered on her own, rather than referring to the full court, that there be a temporary administrative stay until 48 hours after the First Circuit ruled, because the First Circuit didn't issue its own stay. And so then we come to last night, the First Circuit ruled, and I haven't read all the briefing running up to it, but I certainly read their opinion. And essentially they say, look, the government didn't appeal McConnell's earlier order about, either partially fund or fully fund. What the government appealed is the remedial order, and there's no question that the government didn't comply with the original order, and they don't even try to argue it. And to me, this is a very interesting thing to go up to the Supreme Court because,
Right.
the legal mechanics are a little different from the overall question: should SNAP be funded? It's instead, do judges have the authority to enforce their earlier orders with further orders, especially when there is no appeal yet? And
So I have a
I think,
prediction for you, John.
yeah, I don't know how I'm going to be disappointed, but I know it's going to happen.
Well, my prediction is that the government won't go to the Supreme Court with this
Oh,
because, um, first of all, John Sauer, the Solicitor General, yes, he cuts off the justices, and yes, he talks way too fast. But he is a very smart lawyer, and he has protected the government, the administration, from a lot of adverse stuff on the shadow docket by being quite selective about what he brings up there.
this is
And
what
bringing
quite
up
selective means?
Well, I mean, there are hundreds and hundreds of lower court rulings, and he's brought the ones to the Supreme Court that he thinks he can win, and he has a very high rate of having done that, and that's selectivity, and it's a virtue in an appellate lawyer.
Of course,
But
you're right. I was just joking in that he's brought far more cases to the Supreme Court on the emergency docket than, everyone else combined. But go
correct.
on with your point.
But he's brought many fewer than there have been bad orders from the Trump administration's point of view. And I look, he's not my favorite guy in the world, but he's a talent. He's actually been quite effective in that role. And I think one of the reasons is that he's been smart about what he's put in front of them. And so here you have a situation where the underlying thing is going to be moot in a week or two anyway, because the shutdown will be over now that the
Well,
Democrats are caving. So
maybe.
you're gonna win by then having the money, and you can declare victory and go home. Number two, if you bring it to the Supreme Court, you're bringing to them a record in which it's undisputed that you did not comply with the lower court order. So it's in the worst possible posture. there's definitely, the district court definitely had some authority to issue a remedial order, and you're going to have to go up there and say, yeah, but when we conceitedly defy a lower court or fail to comply, I'm not sure it's defiance so much as lack of getting your shit together, but whatever. When we conceitedly don't comply, there's still a limit to what we can, what you can make us do. And that, I don't think you want to put that in front of John Roberts and Amy Coney Barrett. I'm not sure they wouldn't find a way to help you win anyway, because I have so little confidence in these days. But if I were the Solicitor General, I would be like, to the client, are you sure you don't just want to have this resolved by letting the Democrats cave, and then we proudly announce that we're happy to fund, they've reopened the government, so now we can refund SNAP, right? What's the disadvantage to waiting a week?
So that's a fine argument as far as it goes, Ben. I'm not sure it's entirely consistent with the fact that John Sauer approved the emergency stay request to the Supreme Court on Friday.
Right, but that was of a different order, and it was not in a situation in which you had a lower court, and you've read the opinion and I haven't, but it's not, it's an opinion where there's a lower court order that says we have an undisputed record of a violation of the lower court's order. Under those circumstances, a remedial order is appropriate, right? Like, what's the argument for taking that up when the shutdown is ending anyway?
Well, so obviously that's the new fact, right? The shutdown ending, and I don't know how much trust to put in it. I tend to not put much trust in such things and then be proven wrong when everyone says, yeah, of course it was going to end. But it still seems, I mean, and you're absolutely right that having the First Circuit say the Rhode Island judge was correct and he had this authority, and on this record it's clear he had that authority. That does make a difference, but I still feel like Sauer knew what DOJ was going to argue to the First Circuit, and probably had a pretty good idea of how the First Circuit was going to react, especially when the First Circuit did its goofy thing of denying the administrative stay and instead considering the stay pending appeal. So I'm still not convinced that his decision to go to them to the Supreme Court on Friday, is not in super strong tension with a decision to not go to them this week. But you're right, the facts on the ground have changed, so we'll see. But it just seems so super weird to me.
Look, I agree with you that there is no one ever lost money by betting on the gumption of these people in front of the courts. And they've gotten away with a lot by taking a lot of stuff up. But they've also not taken a lot of stuff up. And I think there is a very good argument here that staying away from stuff is staying away from this issue postured this way with the Senate in the current position that it's in is, it's not even winning by losing, it's winning by not playing. Because the thing's going to moot out really quickly anyway. Folks, speaking of mooting out, this show is going to moot out in less than a minute. We're not going to be back tomorrow. We are going to be back Wednesday. And by the way, I'm increasingly inclined to do it Wednesday at 11 a.m. Eastern Time, which is to say 8 a.m. Los Angeles time, not because I won't be awake at 5 in the morning Los Angeles time. I'm kind of always awake at 5 in the morning. It's more that we have these West Coast Greek chorus members who we have shut out of participation, except for the really, really early rising and up late staying ones, for a year now. They have not had the opportunity to be involved. And there are people in Seattle, there are people in, in San Francisco, in Los Angeles. I mean, and I have been fielding complaints from you guys, and I hear you. So I'm thinking that Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday, we will be on West Coast time at the usual time. I will confirm that uh, in any event. There's no show tomorrow because I'll be on a plane. So will
Ben,
Holly
I just
Berkeley Fletcher.
encourage you to promote it at the top of the newsletter so that people who don't read the whole thing catch on and don't miss their opportunity when they're on the West Coast. And
Yes, I think that is a good idea, and we will do that. And by the way, I don't know who the co-hosts are going to be. I don't know who the guests are going to be, but you'll be there. And if you're on the West Coast, maybe you'll be there, and I'll be there, and it's going to be a blast.